And it's time. So let me just sort things out. To prove this is entirely live, apart from the feedback from my Windows machine, does somebody want to put something in chat? Just to, so I'll say hello to Kevin Ching from Down Under. Wonder what time it is where you are. Got 49 people on here. Hello, Sarah from Down Under as well. Hope your gateway is working out for you. So, as you can probably tell, this is completely live. And could someone just confirm that you can hear me loud and clear? Anyone? Lawrence is excited. Yes, yes, excellent. Good, good, good. Right. Okay. So here are a small number of slides to get us started. But as I say, this is live, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to share some of the sort of learning pain shortly. But for now, let's get underway. I've got 3 computers in front of me, so this is always going to be quite interesting. Now, as you can see from the background behind me, I'm in the bat cave, or it's actually the cat cave, because we have 5 cats, one of which may make an appearance, may not. But I'm someone who helps smaller enterprises go right from a device all the way through the system to the end. I don't do lots of corporate, so I don't have a corporate background. But what I do have is a lot of kit that I can just reach for at any time to make things happen. So let's have a look at the timetable. So we're here now at the 0 mark, and I'm doing this intro, so I've still got a couple of minutes left. We are going to just have a brief look at the what and why of integrations. But the thing that I would stress the most is that you watch the bits where I'm showing you, and then I will give you some worksheets so that you can do the practical, and I will be here to support people. And if any questions come up, I can do a screen share. So I'm going to have to mostly ignore any requests for slide links, any requests, because it's a standard one now. I'm going to ignore all the chat while I'm doing the demonstrations, because I want you to concentrate on what I'm showing you on screen, because then you will do what I have done yourself on your own computer with me. So each of these lines that says practical is where you are doing something. If we have time, there is actually a sneaky extra bit for JSON decoding. Yes, Jamal, thank you. Ignore the standard slide request. I can make these slides requests. Just go through the journey. As you can see, I've got a bit of grey hair. This isn't my first rodeo, and I can assure you that you will be supported. And you will find, because we haven't seen much activity on the forum, that the forum has a wealth of knowledge and people like me, which is a good thing, bad thing, that can support you. So, as I say, concentrate on when I'm demonstrating. Please try not to ask questions. Write your questions down so you can ask them after when you're doing the practical. But I'm going to mostly just press on through with the demonstration, so that we can do that nice and smoothly, and then you can replicate it afterwards. Is that a deal? This is your last chance to say yes, Nick. Go on, someone say yes, Nick. Deal, Dominic, thank you. Deal, says Lawrence. Okay, right, okay, good. So we'll kick off. So why integrations? Well, if we start out with a device, and this is a picture of the very sexy generic node from the things industries, which isn't in widespread circulation yet due to chip Armageddon. That's where there are virtually no chips available in the marketplace at the moment, but it's getting there. That gets piped through, as you know, to a gateway, and we've got that all set up now, hopefully. Uplink radio message is passed pretty much transparently straight through to the gateway server at on the things stack, and this cute little picture of the things stack doesn't really do the things industry any justice at all. Now, I think Johan mentioned in one of his in his talk on Monday that the things stack is one of the biggest open source development efforts on GitHub. It's huge. It's got so many moving parts, and you've found out over this week that LoRaWAN comes with a lot of moving parts. So your uplink is piped through a server that accepts, and then a whole pile of other servers do some things, and then that hits the integration that you have set up, and that pipes that out into a variety of different ways. So we're going to be covering MQTT and webhooks, which are the top two. The W3C is the logo for the governing body of that looks after the standard for HTML. But there are also some three other ways of getting data out, which are pretty heavy duty. We'll not be covering those, partly because I don't know them, because can't know everything, and partly because, as I say, it is at the upper end of the corporate getting things done scale. So that goes through a webhook, and then hopefully that then arrives at a dashboard or something that processes the data in some particular way. Maybe it is looking for loud sounds like gunshots when a rhino is being fired upon, or maybe it's as simple as knowing that the field that is an hour's drive away requires additional care and attention, or maybe it just lets you know that half of the building is actually empty and that you can switch off some of the heating services. So dashboards and alerts, and with all of the exciting stuff that you can see on screen, this is where the rubber hits the road. This is why we do it. This is why we have a device. This is why we have gateways. This is why we have the things stack. This is why we have a transport system, because none of this makes any difference whatsoever if we don't get the data out and we don't start processing it, reviewing it, and acting upon it. Now, there's a whole world of how do we do this, how do we do that, how do we get process the data that can be opened up with sort of different maths and with different charting and prediction and machine learning. But at the end of the day, even if you just know that the flat that some little old lady in hasn't reached normal temperature by lunchtime, that might give you heads up that there's a problem. And it's that alert or that dashboard that is what LoRaWAN and any IoT project is all about. I can't emphasize enough, it is all about getting your data out. So I'm pretty passionate about integrations. I do firmware, and I tend to treat the intervening bit. The gateway is a black box, literally. I know enough to be in awe of the code that goes into the thing stack, and I know the console quite well, and I know how to get data out, but I have spent a large part of my life helping people act upon the data. And I've had many projects where I've drifted away because we're not acting on the data. It just becomes a vanity project. My first project, excitingly enough, was measuring beer. How much fun do you think that could have been? Not much beer was drunk. It was a few all-nighters there. So let's have a look at MQTT, which stands for Message Queue Things Telemetry, or words to that effect, with all of the TLAs, which is 3-letter abbreviations, or FLAs, 4-letter abbreviations around. It is quite easy for your brain to get stuffed up, as I'm sure you've found this week. MQTT was a standard that was developed to help provide a transport system that has various levels of assured information. It has a permanent connection back to an office. So you have an MQTT server within the things stack, and then we have you can have an MQTT server in an office. I could have tried to have drawn a picture of a full data center, but that's as I've said, not particularly me. But it could equally be running in a large data center. But equally, with this two-way communication, it could be running on your home desk in your home office, and obviously that's a big deal nowadays. That's the important thing, because some of us have spent 27 years working from home, so we're sort of used to it. But for a lot of people, being able to get a data feed from anywhere is very useful. And that, again, can have a two-way communication. Now, the thing that you really need to remember about MQTT is that it works through your home router or a firewall, as long as the firewall hasn't been set up by some security-obsessed technician, because it forms an outgoing connection from your computer or from your server through to the things stack, and then can have two-way communication backwards and forwards. So it is a really good solution if you are running something within an office environment where it's not feasible for you to have a server on the outside of your network or firewall. Works very well. It works very similar to webhooks. It comes with some extra settings. So there are, if you investigate MQTT, you will find that there is a whole raft of things that you can set up in terms of message deliverability and the way that you are assured to only get a message once, or a minimum of once, and then you deduplicate if necessary, and various different actions that can occur when you have a disconnect, for instance. However, because of the load within the things stack for the community edition, what is sometimes called TTM-v3, within the community edition, we get quality of service level 0, which makes it very almost the same as a webhook. They guarantee to send us the message, but we're not. If we happen to be turned off at the time, we won't necessarily hear it. So, as I say, the takeaway with MQTT is that it works behind your home router or a firewall. So it's a good application in the home office or a small business environment. So how does that differ with webhooks? Well, webhooks run across HTTP, Hypertext Transport Protocol, and is literally the sending a message to a web server. But because of this, the web server has to be publicly accessible on the internet. The great news about this is that there are lots of places that you can go. So you could run Apache on your ISP, or you could run Nginx on your ISP, or you could run something on Amazon Web Services. I haven't figured out quite what their standard web server is. Or you could post into Google Compute platform, which is like AWS or Azure, but from Google. And this is a one-way trip. So what happens is the thing stack will send that message, and then that's it. So it performs the web request, rather like you clicking on a link, and that's it. It goes off, and if it arrives at the other end, that's great. And I can assure you that the vast majority of the time it arrives. You can then use any web scripting language that you like. So you could, you don't even need to use Apache or Nginx or any of these other things. You could write a Flask program, which is Python pretending to be a web server. That will work. You can write your own web server. There's all sorts of tools available. You could write something in Go, which is actually the language that's used on the things stack. However, it has to be accessible from the outside world. Without that external accessibility, it won't work, which means that unfortunately, your computer in your home can work. I have it working because I'm a geek. And you can be a geek like me too, if that's something that you aspire to. But for the majority of people, they usually find that unless they start messing with their router. When I say messing, I don't mean it in a pejorative way, but I'm saying it's not the sort of thing that you just want to go off and do just in case you disconnect your teenagers from their permanent internet connection. So I would put a warning over running your web server at home. Relatively speaking, it's quite simple, but obviously it's running at home, and that comes with some extra complications. So it's not a great solution for at home. So just to emphasize, the HTTP or webhook request is exactly like if you press the search button just there. And the reason I chose this graphic was I was just looking around for a web form, and I happened to find this as an image on the internet, because my grey hair is such that I actually predate the web, which obviously is something I'm very proud of, but is like telling people about black and white TVs. So let's just pause there. Nobody's proud of being old, mate. Yeah, gives you an interesting perspective, and I've still got plenty of life left in me yet. But it also comes with experience, and that's why I'm able to do from the firmware through to the integrations and data processing. I'm not an expert on everything, but I have enough experience over the years of 27 years of running my business. Yeah, it'd be nice to be a spring chicken again. All right, so I'll just swap. Yeah, I can't press that button. I'm pressing this button, so you've got me in full vision. I just need to step back through some slides so I can see where I'm up to. Let's stop that. As I say, I have several windows open here. So where are we up to? Are we 15 minutes in? We're 18 minutes in, a little behind. Right, so I promised you that I was going to push my boundaries as well. So what I decided to do when I got up this morning was something really stupid or crazy. And that is, I'm going to use a fresh copy of a Raspberry Pi install, which means it's got virtually nothing on it but the things that were in the email. So this is going to be a voyage of excitement for me, because whilst I think I've got everything installed, it may be that I end up sharing pain with you and you see me cry. But I thought it would be a good sort of way to sort of show solidarity when we get started. So as I say, this is actually running on my my computer, my iMac in front of me. I've got several screens, so please ignore me moving things around. Right, so the good news is we've got a whole pile of materials to be had on this GitHub. So let's change that so that it is bigger. Monitor space. And we'll get that up to 15. So if you can go to this web address, you will be able to get hold of the worksheets. I don't even have them on here, so I'm going to have to go to this web address. Okay. So for those who aren't familiar with Git, which is a way of keeping track of different files, this is just shuffling things around a bit. The best thing to do is just click on the code and then click download zip and paste in chat. Yes, good point. Oh, thank you, Lawrence. Right. And as you can see, this was set up 2 hours ago because there's nothing like the seat of your pants. So if you download that so that we can open it up, and this will give you access to some PDFs, which will be a good thing. I'm just going to pull that across onto my desktop. I'm using a variant of Linux, and as I say, I'm not don't do this very often on this sort of computer. So let's put that into downloads, open that. So I'm just extracting that archive out so that I can open up in documents, downloads, and I've now got the various different PDFs. You'll also find that there's a link on here that takes you to the integration starters, which have been around a little bit longer, since May, the 26th of May. And again, I'm going to download that. So at this stage, I am going to recommend to you that you just chillax and watch the fun whilst I show you the MQTT demo, and then we will all do it again in a minute. So you will get to do exactly what I am about to do. But I shall leave that down there just for the next few minutes. So let's go into the downloads, and we go into the things stack, and I have a script that I prepared that is for MQTT against the things stack. And hopefully if I open that, and I can choose, is it other accessories? No, not accessories. Told you this was live. Maybe this isn't such a bright idea. Maybe it shares. There we go. I'm going to open this in Python. And the only setup I did in advance was to make the text bigger, so that that everyone can read it. So this is a pre-prepared file, and please don't panic about the length. I will show you precisely what it does in a second, but there are three things that you need to set up just up here. Now, I'm just going to divert off onto my Mac for a second so that I can see the let's go into projects, let's go into that GitHub, and whilst I'm doing that, I would say to people, never play poker with Lawrence, ever. I'm not sure how he can see the cards in advance. Right, so I've got the information that I need coming up on here. Now, I've just realized I've shot myself in the foot, so I'm going to actually switch screens in a second, but this is part of the fun of going live. I'm going to go into the Things network and log into my console, because one of the things that I'm going to need, so I'm going to just go into this, and we have a couple of end devices. Let's have a look at the live data. Now I have an Adafruit Feather, as it happens, on my desk. He says, let's look at this. All these different screens. So I have a little device here with a very dinky little stiff wire antenna on the top. But the nice thing about it is it has a push button. And when I press the button, it sends an uplink, which is great for testing various different things. So we can see that we've got some information has come through. And we can see that I've got a payload formatter, and it tells me that the CPU temperature on this is 20.52. It'll probably go up and down. I've just got some other random pieces of information there. So what I would like to be able to do is get this to come through through my MQTT, and the device is a Adafruit Feather. I'll come back to that later. As I say, try to restrain your curiosity. I can answer things later on. So I'm in my application, which is the Things Summer Academy, and I'm going to generate a new API key. Now, the nice people at Things Industries want us to keep our API key secret, so we don't even get to see it if we don't want to. So I can copy that to the clipboard, and that gets me an API key that I can use with these login details. And this is all on the worksheet. So I'm sure some of you are snuffling around and looking at the worksheet and the like. Now, as I say, I've slightly wrong-footed myself because I don't think because I don't have MQTT Explorer on this thing. So I'm going to actually switch over to a copy of MQTT Explorer on my Mac, which means I need to turn that off and share a different window. And so you can now see this nice piece of shareware, and you can see here's one I created earlier. So I better delete that, and we'll start with a new one. So I'm going to set up the login credentials that allow me to talk back to the server. And click plus, and as I say, this is all written down. I'm going to call it TTSA. I'm going to want to turn encryption on. Now, because different oh, no, don't copy that. Because of the different ways of specifying the information, you can just copy to clipboard, and then from the console page, and then you can paste that in. We actually need to remove that and put that in there. And I will just get the other credentials. So I've got my username. No, I haven't got my username. Okay. Paste. Right. You'll see that it says @TTN at the end. If you're using the community server, the tenant ID is @TTN. I will be asking people at a later date if they know what the tenant ID is, because then it will save us answering on the forum. What's the tenant ID? Right, and then I'm going to paste in my password. I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to click connect. Ah, nothing blew up. Hurrah! So I've now got this connection to the stack, and if I press the button, I suddenly get this little down arrow, and I can drill down through, and we get a copy of the message. And somewhere in here is the payload decoded, and you can see the temperature has dropped slightly. So I use MQTT Explorer when I want to do MQTT type activities, but if you need to write a program for it, and as I say, don't worry about the fact that this is going to go away. It is on the document, and it is going to be. I will be here to support you. So we're back with our Python, and I need to do pretty much the same sort of thing now, because I'm a white middle-aged guy. I've set up most of this stuff. You just because I'm obviously time for drinking wine and stroking cats. So I've already set the region. You need to set your region to whatever it is that you're using. I need to copy over this bit here, the username, and then I need to copy to the clipboard my top secret key. Now, obviously, you can now see that, and anyone who is coming back to the recording will think, ah, I can get access to Nick's MQTT on that. Well, I will be removing the key later on. But just bear in mind, as I say, that we have the information is kept within your with it as in plain text, but there are other ways of securing it. Right, okay, temperature dropped because I'm chilled. Yes, I wish. So I'm just going to save that, and then everyone cross their fingers, because we're going to see, having just put the credentials over, that's all I've done, if this is going to work. And we've got a connection, and we have subscribed to a channel, which is like subscribing to Netflix or to Disney Plus or the like. And every 10 seconds, we just get a little dot to tell us that things are turned on. And if I press my button, a message comes through. Now, I'm going to do that again in real time. So you can see me. I've got the button, I've got the button, I've got the button, I've got the button. Press. How quick was that? That is just... so you can see that you can get data so fast out of a LoRaWAN connection. Now, yeah, okay, this is on a system that is all set up to give you with not optimal gateways. You know, you don't always look after my kit, but it's got a couple of gateways. It's got a well set up feather. It's got the right antenna. It's got some ropey Ethernet cable, but it's running over a fairly fast connection. But still, nonetheless, you can see that you can press the button and you will get some information very quickly. Now, there have been a few people talking about, like, oh, I want to use LoRaWAN for some sort of not quite safety critical, obviously not going to run a nuclear power station, but just because it's fast and getting you uplinks doesn't mean to say that you need to rely on that. There's a whole raft of stuff to do with the way that radio can interfere. It's a shared spectrum. But on the other hand, it can move the data quite quickly. Now you can see here that it's created, that it's spouting some stuff about some files. So let's have a little look at what these files might be. So actually this code here, he says, if you move things around, actually writes out some files, and the idea is that this is your starter for 10. This just gets you working straight out the box. So if I go to these, if I double click on this file, you can see that I have a tab delimited file with the uplinks. Now it's a generic file, so it just puts the form payload in. It doesn't necessarily have all of the information that you want, but that's your job. It also it creates a file for each day, and that has all the uplinks it receives. No, we don't want to rename. It has a file for a device, and that will have all of the for the application. So that'll have all the uplinks, and then there is a file for the application and device, so that you can drill down in various different ways. This code is up on GitHub and is entirely for people to use. So what I would like you to achieve in this next session, in the practical session that is starting in a minute, is I would like you to get MQTT Explorer set up, and the crib sheet, the notes, show you how to do that. You will find on the master document, the master handout, that it has on the second page a little sort of console 101 available for you to navigate your way through if you haven't found these things yet. And apart from drinking tea, I am here for you to type questions into chat or Q&A and for me to help you with this section. Now, there are a few little gotchas. Sometimes the security certificates don't work quite as well as we'd like. Windows, I'm looking at you. In that respect, we need to review these notes here and possibly change this port to the insecure port. For the purposes of this, that's no big deal. We're just learning. Obviously, having it transferred in a secure fashion is better. Then once you've got your Python working, there are some things to try out to filter which different messages that you get, and to also try sending a downlink. But that will really be down to how comfortable you feel with Python and the like. Now, because we all live and breathe the things network and the academy, you will have received on your email, it says, find the notes, prerequisites, that you will have received a document that you can link to that gives you anything. So if you haven't had the opportunity to install the MQTT for Python, you must do that, because it won't work without that extra bit. But that is also included in the prerequisites that we have downloaded from GitHub. So let me just emphasize that. Pixel. My computer's looking like the flight deck of Concorde now. There you go, that shows my age. Right, so yes, you've got all of these documents here. So, your turn. Two things. Get it going in MQTT Explorer, because that makes sure that you've got these settings working. Then transfer the details over to Python and get that running. And then if you want, you can then go further, or you can go and have a cup of tea and a lie down. We've got about 40 minutes available for this. So go to it. Now is your chance to shine. And and feel free to chat as well now, because I can do both. From the web servers, can downlinks be sent? Yes. Right. Okay. Yes. This is all recorded. Everything's recorded. We're recording everything. And as you can tell, I'm not shy, so I can always re-record anything. So, could someone just confirm that they're going to get cracking with this? Go on, someone in chat, someone brave. I know Grant will be gagging to do this. Oh, Jeff's trying. Oh, Dominic started. Excellent. Okay, so yeah, as soon as you get stuck, just take a step back for a second. Think, okay, if I say this question out loud, does it sound as daft as, you know, is it raining? Because I live in Bolton, that's a daft question. But yeah, just ask in the chat. Right, okay. First session that sound won't work on my iPad. Any suggestions? Sorry, no. Right, I'm just going to switch over to sharing the entire of my screen. It's all of the, make sure there's nothing too exciting on here. Right, so I've got those documents, and I've got my MQTT Explorer, and I've got my copy of Pixel. So as you achieve a level of success, if you could put a woohoo in your getting in Python, well, ideally, you have it as a shortcut on your menu. I deliberately chose Pixel so that there was a pattern interrupt. As you can see, I'm a Mac person foremost, but this is there's actually an iMac that's got Windows 10 running on it. And I'm certified on both and certifiable. Right, okay. So we've got 93 people. Woohoo, got it. So that's a big woohoo for Lawrence, who presumably has recoded the entire of the Python, or he's got MQTT Explorer running. What else can I do on here? I could do something really foolish. I could try loading up, no, not Alpine. Let's copy over a Windows. So I can try this on Windows whilst we're, I suppose I better use Windows 10. Let's, it's a bit scary getting people to do it this way. I don't know if they're doing anything. You need to download pip from Windows. Yep. God of your choice, save us from the Google stroke Chrome monoculture. Actually, no, I don't want to upset my base install. So I'm going to copy that over. 45 gigabytes. Ah, very good point from Lawrence there. If you don't have a live device working, but you have an end device. Oh, I got to log in again. That's interesting. Okay, thank you very much. What you can do is you can go into a device. Here's the maker WAN that I set up earlier, but I got trounced by Lawrence at Poker. Did I mention it earlier? If you want to sending a message, you can do that and simulate an uplink. And then hopefully, oh, I've broken my Python, bad Nick. And I'll come back and explain that why that is in a second. And Lawrence couldn't explain to someone why the simulate needs to include all the fields. But as I say, it's all part of the fun. So I'm going to close that shell. And run module again. And just to prove I can get it back, press the button, get a message. Someday I will be able to pronounce the Eastern European names. I'm really sorry, I really don't know where to start. So Mr. Zerd, cool, you've got MQTT Explorer on Linux. Let's see if I can actually install it here. There's various other clients available. MQTT Explorer works on Ubuntu for sure. What was I doing? I was going to fire up Windows, wasn't I? And then I'll do the Windows pane. So, how can I see the messages? Jamie, you'll have to send a message from your device. Did send a message. And you will need to open all of this up. If I do a join request, so I've unplugged my device unceremoniously and plug it back in, it'll take a few seconds, but we should then see the join request. Where would you like to connect that? Oh, engagement control. And there's my join request, and as you can see over here, yet again, I've broken my Python. This is somewhat deliberate. I'm aware of this because I don't want to blindly use software. You see the message on the TTN console. Now, are you referring to MQTT Explorer. Yes, you are. So if I press the button again, I've now actually got six here. Let's start. You've always got to set up Windows, haven't you? I've actually got 6 in my history. Is it the up? Yes, it is the up. So you need to drill all the way through into up. Right, my sound quality may be a function of me running Windows to the application, so I'm going to turn that off. No, Edward, there are no replays ever. We're never going to share this information. It's too secret. Yes, it will be on. It will be on YouTube. It is on YouTube. It's just trailing a few seconds behind. Turning it off. Well, there you go, Jeff. You see, that's what Windows does to a machine. Yeah, me asking my machine to run 2 virtual machines and stream is probably more than I could cope with. So, anybody else got MQTT Explorer? Don't be shy. There's 90 people in the session. Oh, we've got a QA question. Right, that's in chat. Works for me. Got it working. Excellent. So, after you've got your MQTT Explorer working, you can then move on to Pixel. Or to your Python. And to say what you're looking to do here is just change these 3 things, and that will allow you to run the module and see lightning fast connects. But when you say cannot connect to TTN, can you, do you mean an MQTT Explorer? Press delete an MQTT and then host turned blank and I can't get it back. Just start a new one, Alf. Let's, if I disconnect mine, this on the handout, you've got, you will see that that it has a screenshot of how your settings should be, but obviously personalized for yourself. The 2 wrinkles are that if you accidentally leave the port number at the end, that won't be so good because then it'll clash with that. But apart from that, it's literally give it a name, encryption, whatever your region is, port number, and this is the encrypted port, the username copied over from your console, and the API key copied over from your console. At worst, you could literally just start again. You could create a new connection and then just fill in the blanks. If there's security going on, then you would set that to port 1883 and turn off the encryption, and that gives you the same thing, but it goes in plain text instead. It's working now. Excellent. What was the change? It did not change the port number for TLS. Right. Cool. And thank you for being honest. It helps because then we know to remind people you need to change the port number. In time, this stuff gets easy. All right. MQTT Explorer, 15 minutes left to download. Oh, not great. How are you getting on, Alf? And has anyone progressed on to their Python? $92 people. 92 people. How many have succeeded? No, you just use the same one. Personally, I'll be trashing mine at the end. Obviously, only you can see yours. Yeah, it's not going to make a huge heap of difference. Yep, Andreas, good work, excellent. My Python just cracks. Yeah. Andreas, are you on Windows? Not that that's a bad thing, particularly. No, you're on Mac. Yeah, that depends on how the certificates are installed. If I highlight this, so for anybody watching along, in the handout, it sort of explains that you sometimes have to turn off different things. So you might need to turn off the TLS, the security. Just by commenting it out and then changing that there. And if I actually Control C that, and then I can run the module in. And we get the same thing, but this time it's not encrypted in Python. Some JSON uplink message. That is, Jamal, that's because you are you've just given it a join request and it doesn't know about join requests. If you restart, if your device is now joined, you just restart Python, and you will find that it will start piping messages through. I needed to leave something for people to be able to sort of do extra extension exercises on. Spider 4. Spider 4. Who's Spider 4? Let me just ask Siri. No, it's silly thing to do, isn't it? It's, it's a little IDE for Python. Right, so Jamal, yeah, that wasn't a crash. That's an error in the code. As I say, this code is actually starter code is set up to just deal with uplink requests, and you'll actually find in the handout that it talks about filtering. So if I wanted to set up a filter just to do uplinks, what we can do is, instead of subscribing to everything, which is what we're doing here, we can tell it to subscribe just to uplinks for any device. So that says, doesn't matter what's between those two, that's good. Run that. And I can do an uplink. That's good. I'm going to unplug. I'm going to plug it back in, and that will obviously send a join, as we will see very shortly. When it gets there, Just take a few seconds for it to do the join. So we've had the join request come in. Oh, I've still managed to break it. And that's the other thing that's in here. And I'm doing this merely to highlight that the rocky road to success is literally a bit rocky. So if I do it again, I'll close that. If I do it again, it all works. And I'll cover the whys and wherefores of that in the post official session follow-up. Yeah, Paul, I'm not sure how to use Control-Delete to shut Python down. Okay. Yeah, let me see what's on YouTube at the moment. Right. I'm not saying that I have that I'm a superhero, but I'm live. So Paul, this won't be available until I've finished, because it's live and it doesn't do live streaming to YouTube. It can only play back pre-records. And I'm not doing the pre-record. Finn, can you tell us which program you mean? Judging message version 3. Yes, that means you've run it successfully. If it doesn't crash all over the window with red text, then yes, you're good. But for the people like Paul, on a admin day, my response time on the forum is measured in seconds sometimes. So there's plenty of follow-up time. Please do not worry if you are struggling. So, how are people getting on? How do they feel? Put some love hearts on the right. So hopefully you've got as far as you've definitely got MQTT Explorer set up. Attribute error, module enum has no attribute int flag. Mr. Zerd, are you on Windows? Yep, Geordie, that means you've got it done. You can see on my screen that this is a success message. It means I've got a message has come through, and it has saved that information to those files. So yeah, high five. Linux Ubuntu. Right. Yeah. They'll also so Geordie's got it working, and there may be some missing updates. Are you using Python 2 or Python 3 is the other question. Interesting. Normal. This is development life. Personally, couldn't say off the cuff how to fix it. I'd have to spin up an Ubuntu, see if I get the problem, and if I get the problem, explore what might be missing. Although it does seem to be quite a low-level issue. Just installing Python 3 and the MQTT library should do it. Right. Okay, so Thomas Lab. So if you scroll down to publish, in here, if you're looking at my screen at the moment, Thomas Lab. So if I click on up, I've got, it fills all of this in for me. I just need to change the up to a down, and then push, which will just overwrite. And then I can get my bits in JSON to send, copy, and paste that in there. Oh. There we go. JSON, so we can see it a bit better. Does that answer Lab? Does that should get you going? If I publish that, then get a new topic called downlink and queued. And then if I switch over to my end device, line data, and I press the button, there it is. You can see it's going to send a downlink message. And at this end, it's just been told the word beef, because you can write, I don't get where you type down. So in the publish box, in the topic, it's here. Yours will be different, but if you've clicked on an up, you can then just change the word up to down/push. You have to generate your own API key. I'm not sure which one you think is provided, Stephen. Yeah, as I say, there are some wrinkles in this. You need to have a device that's connected that's already sent at least one uplink. And as I say, I'll go through the details of why and how you get around these things. It's to do with the toolkit, the massive Lego parts that have been used to build the whole system. For Lauren's benefit, Google protocol buffers has some wrinkles. So yeah, if you've got a device that's already joined and has already sent a couple of uplinks, you should find everything's fine. I hadn't really anticipated the whole devices not being on the network, because I've got so many that are already on here. Right, okay, so let me just have a look. So it looks like we've got Andreas sending a payload to turn his LED on and off, which officially promotes him to being guru level, we'll go with. So we're going to wrap things up now on this front. So I'm going to close down. It's still running. Do you want to kill it? Well, that's a bit brutal, isn't it? Do I want to kill it? Say, do I want that window? Maybe do I want this window? Right. Okay, so we're going to move on now to HTTP, which means I need to get my crib sheet up. And I'm going to switch over to just sharing the pixel screen. Like so. Now, I know it's tough to try and stop what you're doing right now, but the next section, doing all of this with HTTP, is needs to start so that you can then have a hack at it. You'll be pleased to know that HTTP is simpler in a whole variety of different ways. So there's no need to sweat the small stuff, and I can't emphasize enough how much I enjoy this sort of thing in terms of getting people going. Mostly because no one wants to hire old farts like me. We end up having to come in and troubleshoot. Right, so we have a template that was came within this GitHub. So if I have a look, we have tts webhook.tab.php. Now you will recall from earlier on that we cannot do this from inside a network. It has to have a public-facing web server. And obviously that poses a slight technical problem for people because they probably don't have one that they can just sort of run up at the drop of a hat. So I'm just going to load up the instructions because cunningly, and for a fair chunk of last night, I've set up a training server for the different regions. So I absolutely emphasize yeah, right, okay. Alf's just learned that adding extras on the journey sometimes comes a little astray. I would ask people to cease the chat for now, and so we can concentrate on the this segment. So to help you get things set up, I've got some training servers for each region, and I'm using a little bit of open source shareware, fireware type stuff. I'd doubly extra emphasize to people that they do not try to do this in parallel because I want to move along. So I am going to log into this web space using some information that was sent to me by email because you all need to have your own login, I hope for obvious reasons. So I'm going to sign in, and I don't want to save that password because I actually have 3,000 of them now. This web space will be available to those who have a paid ticket for at least the end of the month until you can get yourself sorted out. I use a web host in the UK to do this as a backup webhook. I've got a variety of other servers, more than I should have, and I've got 3 more as of last night. One in Frankfurt, one in somewhere in Australia, and one in Dallas, Texas, set up to do this for the regions. So these will be available for paid users until the end of the month, so that you can come back and do things with this. For the free users, I'll probably need to turn it off on Monday, but just to emphasize, I20 UK. No, yeah. These are the people I happen to use. I personally happen to use. You can find your own hosting provider, but if I buy a domain name from these people for £7, €7, $7, however much, for 1 year, that's a year's domain name, they provide me with a bit of hosting space that runs PHP. So I have set up on some web space that allows me to do exactly what we're about to do here for £7 a year, which is obviously phenomenal value. So getting your own space should be really straightforward. So I'm going to, we've got logged into space that you've got instantly available to you. I'm going to upload this file. So the webhook, just drag and drop that on there. That is uploaded. And we can see it's in the file list now. Now, if I use the link button, that runs that on that server that's in Frankfurt, and it just returns, because I did the request and not the thing stack, it has just told me what the version number of this script is, so that I can just verify this web address. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. We're going to go over to my application, and without rubbing it in, don't do an ALF, just stick to the application that you've got. So I'm going to go into webhooks. I don't have any set up here, that's because I deleted it this morning. I'm going to add the webhook. Now you'll see that there are lots of pre-prepared webhooks that will send your data over to any number of dashboards. And after this session, I think it's 1 o'clock, DataCake will be doing a demo and then a Q&A, so you can see how to go about getting something set up on their system. That they all come with different sorts of plans. Some have free access plans. Some of them have features that are different. You've all had the opportunity to use the TTM mapper, which is very specifically for sending messages through to the TTM mapper website, whereas the rest of these are generally general purpose. But I have nothing against any of these companies, but the cloud is somebody else's computer. I'm Nick McCloud, so I own all the Scottish computers in the world. That's a joke. That's a bit too subtle. But the cloud is somebody else's computer, and I am a great fan of always having your own custom webhook set up so that you can always have your data where you want it, how you want it. So I'm going to add a plain webhook. I'm going to type in my webhook ID. So I am going to call this no, let's not call it No Poker with Lawrence Descartes, because IDs across the stack need to be unique. I tend to prefix everything with Descartes or just a D. Demo of webhook, and I'm going to ask it to send it as JSON, which is a reasonably compact format that you've been looking at. Protocol buffers is about as tight as you can get, but isn't very human readable. So I paste in my URL from where I saw this, and I need to turn on at least one message. So that's the uplink message that I'm going to turn on, and that's it. So we've got our own unique ID, doesn't matter what it is. Format, copy and paste over the web address that we get in the monoculture of Chrome. I turn on the uplink message. I don't fill anything in here at all. I scroll down and click Add Webhook, and we can see that that's there. And then what we do is we press the button. So I'm pressing my button. And if we go back to Tiny File Manager, ta-da! you can see that we've got 3 files. Is it okay to have a non-standard port on the webhook URL? Well, Jamal, you've asked a question. Short answer, you can't. Oh, I don't know. I actually tried. Maybe. I tend to dedicate a server to, and because I'm usually got a backend database and an API that I've got running on that. I've not actually tried with the thing stack. I'm very keen on keeping things very simple. So, not unsurprisingly, we have pretty much exactly the same format of data coming in. Please ignore this JavaScript-based PHP error message. It's just having problems with the tiny file size. But you can see here that we have pretty much identical to the same data that we were downloading earlier. So if I just initiate a couple more uplinks, it says just checking that it's coming through on my copy of right. Now, I do not recommend this in any way, shape, or form for security purposes. But if I click on this direct link, I can then copy this. And then if I happen to have a spreadsheet on here, which I don't, I could, in fact, actually then just paste that straight into a spreadsheet. Or alternatively, I could save this stuff if I knew where the save button was in Chrome, because I don't normally use Chrome. It's odd. Yeah, there's no file menu, is there? Anyway, you can save it from Chrome, or you can copy and paste it over. And you could then just open that. Now, I would actually protect the directory in a variety of different ways. But as you can see, you can get a straight out of the box experience with webhooks without any configuration whatsoever. It is absolutely the easiest, simplest system. And as well as being the easiest and simplest system, it is also creates the lightest load on the thing's servers. Now, one of the requirements of being a forum moderator is that you're rabid about protecting the community as a whole. So a lot of the community members are very keen on ensuring that we don't overstretch the servers. So because there's no quality of service available to guarantee delivery through MQTT, if you do have access to an external server, I strongly recommend that you use HTTP. If you don't have access to an external server, I strongly recommend that you find a web host somewhere relatively close to wherever the data centers are, that are halfway between you and your regional region. So if you're in the States, you could go with somebody in the States. If you're in Singapore, you could go with somebody in Singapore, or Australia. In EU, you could go somewhere in France or Spain or wherever. And buy that £7 domain, €7, $7, whatever it is in your currency, to give you access to somewhere where you can put these scripts up. Because the next step is that you can then edit these files. I'll happily share the tiny file manager as well, so that people can do this. So you can just literally edit it in place. And with a couple of lines of code, you could have it emailing out messages or passing them on to another service, like if this, then that, or reformatting the payload format so that it is then suitable for Dweet, or any number of other JSON reading type formats. However, just so you know, the hosting provider I use blocks the mail on these servers so that we can't all turn it into a big spam service. So you can't send email using my server. Sorry, but not sorry. So we have seen that by just uploading using the upload button and dragging and dropping over the file. Oh, I'll cancel that. And then by getting the link and then going into the integrations, adding the webhook, scrolling down to the best box of all, and just filling in the basic form. And that is all detailed for you in the handout. So literally the first page through to the halfway down the second page tells you everything that you need to know to replicate that. If once you've done that, you want to crack on with doing a little bit more, what you can do is look at filtering the messages in the same way that we can with the MQTT. And that will involve you, it says going back here, let's go back there, edit the webhook. That will involve you just subtly changing this here, adding some information into the boxes, and then turning on some other options so that you can get different information into different places. But as before, I'm going to be here sucking a throat sweet shortly, and you can crack on. Everyone has their login that has arrived on their email sent late afternoon yesterday. So check your email for something from Lawrence that gives you your login and user ID. You should not save anything in here that you don't want the FBI, NSA, GCHQ or anybody else to get interested in. And as I say, I will need to keep an eye on the loading, but you will have access to this for a while. So over to you. I'll reshare the whole of my screen so that we can dig into any chat that comes up. Are webhooks the same, similar to HTTP REST? Yes, no. REST usually defines what happens if you do a get, a post, a put, or a delete. These are literally just like filling a form in. There is a small difference, Robin, in so much as, let's actually edit this page. The information comes in because it's in JSON and centers a type of application / JSON. That means it comes into PHP like this. So it's not the same as REST. It's a little bit more, it is simpler because it's the job of the server to get that information over as absolutely quickly as possible. And it doesn't want to sort of tie things up with any head requests and checking for all sorts of cross-site bits and pieces. So, on with the show. You need, as I say, you need to go into your this is the document in Summer Academy, into the master handout, go to the training server that's closest to your region, and then use your login details from Lawrence's email. And I will be here to solve any arising problems. Yes, Robin, once you've got it, once it's arrived on your server, for me, most of the time I've got some template databases that I use. It gets put into a database, processed, put into a database, has other things processed, and then I've got another set of files that I use for an API so that I can do the whole HTTP REST. What's the link to the handouts? That would be on this web address, git.io/, and let me put that into the So I've only lost 3 people so far off my account, which I think is a win. Kobe, whatever email address it is that Lawrence has on file for you is the one that he will have sent it to, which may well be the one that you signed in with. But if you've only got 2 email addresses, either should do. Whoa, go Daniel. Robin, what you can do, I'll show you on screen, is you can go into your application, into your end device, and then when you're in there, you can go to messaging, and then that will enable you to simulate an uplink. And then if I go over to Tiny File Manager and we log in, we think that we're doing uplink messages. There's my manual uplink there. Perhaps for the next week, develop a virtual machine with all products. I have a virtual machine that has Node-RED and InfluxDB and Grafana on it. My head still hurts each time I use it, mostly because I tend to write my own stuff, don't use the other solutions. But yeah, Sylvian, there's a possibility. Perhaps you need to flesh out. Send me a private message on Hopin as to what it is that you've got in mind. Okay, so we've, oh, Lawrence is feeling strong because he's got it to work. So we've got a few quick wins here. My fellow moderator's gone a bit quiet though. Do we know what's up with Jeff? Best practice is to group the integrations. He's busy concentrating. Geordie, that's one for the forum. Because you can have payload formatters at device level as well as application level. Personally, I don't use payload formatters because I like to reduce the load, and sometimes they get out of sync with development and the like. I tend to decode actually within my scripts. But you can, there's a whole variety of techniques because you can filter by, you can use different port numbers on the device. You can look up the device ID in your own database and then respond appropriately. The integrations, when I talk about reducing the load, this information here has to sit in memory all of the time on the ThingStack Community Edition server. All of your payload formatters, that would be for a device, and devices, payload formatter. All of these, all this JavaScript has to be in memory all of the time on the servers, so that it can respond quickly. Yeah, Geordie, architecting a system that works with 1 or 2 devices is fine. Architecting a system that works with 10,000 devices is just a whole different can of excitement. Well, we can catch up on the forum and have a longer discussion. The forum's great because you can, it's threaded, it allows you to sort of do things. So Robin asks, how does Node-RED compare to all the stuff we've done here? Can it be done on your RPI without webhooks? Yes, yes. Node-RED is useful in so much as it tends to use MQTT. And then it provides a drag and drop environment that enables you to manipulate the data in a variety of different ways and then send it on somewhere else. And it does run adequately on a Raspberry Pi, not necessarily something I would use for real commercial work, but because it's MQTT, it works lovely behind your office or home firewall or router. There are a number of wrinkles with the payload formatter. Just occasionally, because the payload formatters have a maximum runtime of 100 milliseconds, very, very occasionally, it's unable to run within 100 milliseconds because of congestion. So if 300 uplinks arrive all at the same time, instead of what is averaging out about 50 per second, it may be that the server isn't able to run the payload formatter. It gets to the end of the it starts running it, or it's schedules it, and then when it gets to the 100 milliseconds, it has to move on, partly to ship your data. Yeah. So I use payload formatters for development work, but I tend to remove them and do my decoding on the end server, so that yeah, it just streamlines the whole process. And whilst it's security by obfuscation, it also means that we're not sending a pile of JSON over the network that says what's in it. That's not a good one. That's the test one. Even if it's encrypted, you know, if someone was able to see what was going on, they can see that what these field values are. There are yeah, it's a huge box of Lego. It's piecing the right bits together, but generally there's no harm done having the wrong Lego brick on. You can, as long as you don't get too far down the path, you can usually backtrack and get things changed over. And if you've got the raw payload, this bit, you can always decode it yourself. Filtering is now working. Daniel's obviously a web genius. Was he a guru now? So we've obviously dropped a few people. We started out with 97, I'm down to 82. Which, all right, okay. Alf's obviously a Azure man. Good stuff. The challenge with the opportunities, the number of bricks in the Lego box can get really confusing. I have an integration that's a webhook script integration that works with Google Docs, so that it sends it over to Google Docs, actually runs a script, a JavaScript script in Google Compute, and then puts it into a spreadsheet. I'm doing some work on AWS at the moment to process data, and I stupidly asked which would be the best database to use out of the 5 or 6 that are available, and that just was like an endless discussion of, well, it depends. In the end, they basically said, oh, most people just use this one. Any other successes coming on board? The use your own authorization key really is it's best for people that can code a little bit in PHP. Sarah's got it working, excellent. A bit worried that Jeff hasn't. It's literally drag and drop and then fill in the form on the still battling MQTT. Why are you on Jeff? Why are you on MQTT Explorer? We're doing PHP now. Jamal, anything that increases your knowledge and finds different ways of doing this, it's all good. Jeff, if you've still got the connection box open, you have to click connect. Yeah. Again, grey hair comment. PHP for me is all about the fact that it was called personal homepage originally. I absolutely, literally predate the browser. So, yeah. But you know, it's a relatively generic language that is relatively easy to translate. Oh, you've got a few years under your belt as well. Good, excellent. The big boys now use Go. I supervise Go. My brain's a bit full now to learn more languages, but I don't. So I can read it, but I don't necessarily write it fluently. Before they made it object-orientated, yeah. Well, there's a time and a place for that. But Composer does my head in. So, any other successes? Although I'm a bit worried that that Jeff's still on MQTT and now has an abort option. Not really sure. Is this when you click connect, Jeff? Right. Cool. Sam's got his webhook running. So by my count, I think there's probably about 15 people in the chat, which means there's about 65 shy people watching. Do share your successes. You don't have to do a happy dance. You can do a happy dance, it doesn't matter, because no one can see. Right, where are we up to? So we've got about 5 or 10 more minutes on webhooks. But as I say, we have actually got a chunk of time set aside for general Q&A, and I'm quite happy to loiter for another hour after to deal with any debug any wrinkles. How would you initiate a downlink from here? Well, puppies have to go hungry every time someone does a downlink, and you have to send back a message from PHP within this environment. which is relatively straightforward if you know PHP. But I didn't put it on the handout because I don't want to try and debug that. In the MQTT, I provided the one-liner that you need to use the publish command. So this sets up, if you're looking at my screen, the JSON that's needed, and then this is the command that you use. That said, you have to unravel the fact that the Python that I've provided you with is explicitly set up to download and send to a tab delimited file. Which I guess opens up the possibility of doing MQTT integration with Python 102 as a next class along, where we strip back the script, which provides great utility as is, but then rebuild it back so that people can do other things with it. But yeah, I also don't want to be the one that delivers server meltdown code until people have got the hang of uplinks first. Klaus, the principal advantage is that less puppies are harmed by using HTTP because it is less load on the server. The reality is you can write code within MQ. You can drive MQTT from virtually anywhere. You could run that actually on the server as well. If you have a paid-for instance, as in you have your own bit of the TTI infrastructure for your own personal use, whilst that can still exchange information backwards and forwards with the rest of the community gateways, and the community gateways can contribute to your server as well, you would be able to have settings adjusted like the quality of service. So quality of service in MQTT is 0 is best endeavors. It's like the HTTP. It's just sent, and there's no check to see if it arrived. Then level 1, he says, let's just get up is that it will be sent, and someone will, and the server will actually the server will ensure that it's still there if need be. So you are going to get it at least once. So as it says here, the broker, the server at TTI, will keep sending it until it gets an acknowledgement. And then there is a level 2 where the server sends a message saying, I've got a message for you, are you okay? And the other end says, yes, I am. And then it says, here's the message. And then it says, okay, I've got that. So these have quite considerable extra load on network bandwidth. As I say, out of the box, TTN Community Edition is level 0. It's like thrown over the fence in the same way that HTTP is. None of this is bad because we have an integration called data storage integration, and we activate that, and it's turned on. Hurrah! And all of a sudden, we've now got the ability to retrieve up to about 30 hours worth of uplinks. So if in your script you find that you've missed one, you can query data storage. Now, if you can recall back to Monday, you will remember that Johan mentioned that typical packet loss is about 10%, and then he mentioned forward error correction. And then someone asked me what forward error correction was, and I had to have a little lie down because it's yeah, you need to have lived firmware for a few weeks before it starts making sense. Within my immediate environment, I get about 7% packet loss on the radio. Once it's within the TTI infrastructure, it's all fine. If one of my servers goes down, apart from getting an alert, obviously the integration won't be able to pass the information on. So rather than getting too tied up with quality of service levels, I use storage integration, and if I detect a gap in receipt of uplinks, I can then write code to check to see if it's in storage integration. So version 2 of it uses Node-RED. Well, we might better do a workshop just on Node-RED. Might be easier for non-developers. Yeah, this is where it gets tricky, Jamal, isn't it? Because where do you draw the line? Yeah, we've just had an unfortunate gun-related incident in the UK. I'm mindful of sensitivities, but for my generation, we have a phrase called shooting yourself in the foot. I'm also a great fan of Dirty Harry, played by Clint Eastwood. And he says, a man's got to know his limitations. For me, it's playing music, a musical instrument, or trying to draw anything. So we have to draw a line somewhere about what we mean by non-developer. Someone who wants an easy coding environment and can understand code, Node-RED is great. But when you start asking somebody who hasn't got the concept of code, it goes a bit pear-shaped. Anyway, so Bernard, any idea on connecting to an API which is using HTTPS and Swagger? No, I tend to use curl at the command line for testing. Yeah, and I can do a whole pile of API stuff at a later date. Chris, if you are getting, oh, Chris, you've circled back to MQTT. I'll need to sort this out, but where's this link? The link is actually in the script. Let's see. MQTT. Although, because with the upgrades, it may have gone walkabout. Oh no, here it is. There we go. Right. Okay, so we have now hit the right moment to move on to the next chunk, which is extracting values from JSON. Just to, yeah, no problem, Chris. You know, I'll look at the dates in a minute, but I knew LoRa before I came to use LoRaWAN from doing high altitude ballooning. I think I set aside a summer to get my first few devices going. Here is one of the first ones. It's a nasty mess of a Pro Mini with an RFM95 radio on the back and a couple of sensors. And then I learned about bigger microcontrollers for LoRaWAN. I'd already been using PIC chips. I think it probably took 18 months before enough of it had sunk in that I was fluid. You know, I could flow. So yeah, it's learning to fly, learning to do high altitude ballooning, learning to do LoRaWAN, are all I've found to be chunky, hard. Learning to drink wine, and I have a certificate in it, much easier. And I'm a volunteer for the ambulance service, and that sits somewhere in between in terms of knowing enough to be useful whilst I'm holding the fort until the ambulance actually arrives. So yeah, don't underestimate the moving parts. But let us move on to extracting values from JSON. How's everyone doing? This is making sure I've got trousers on. Let's stand up, shake it out, get our arms moving, back down. Can I see any chat? Any thumbs up? People still alive? Coffee time, says Kobe. Yes, yes, it's definitely coffee o'clock. Let's get to 11:30, and we can have a brain and bio break, and then we can do some more. Yay! Right, so I'm back just on Pixel because what I want to do is pick through the information that's actually arriving. So I'm just going to close a few of these things away so that they don't interfere. Right, I'm going to have to just grab a bit of JSON from somewhere. Oh. Okay, so let's get a new window and paste. No, that's not the JSON. Oh, I know, I can get it from the console, can't I? So as if you can find the right. Whee! Go there. Live data. Right, so I'm going to grab all the information that is sent through to us. So as if you can get it scrolled down. Copy that, and so we can see it paste. So this is the entirety of the message that is sent through from the server, and a lot of it is relatively straightforward. You know, you can see that we've got some device identifiers, so we know what our application ID is and what the device ID and other information. And whilst you can't use the dev address, you can use the dev EUI and join EUI as a unique identifier, because that's exactly what goes on in the stack. And then we get all this other sort of information, some of which sort of appears to be duplicated. The correlation IDs are a fun one. They are actually all of the messages that pass through the system. So if you are capturing information from your gateway server, you should be able to cross-reference with a similar message from the gateway. We get some really good stuff like receive that. We get a block called uplink message, and if you don't have a decoder, you won't get that. All you'll get is the port number, the count, and the form payload. So whilst you're developing and debugging, this decoded payload is important, and that's the bit we're going to focus on in a minute. But just to continue the tour, we also get some metadata. So at the moment, I've got a couple of things moved around. but I've got a V3 and a V2 gateway running within sight of the very small antennaed device. So you can see the V3 gateway in all of its detail, and also a message that came through Packet Broker via V2, which is a gateway that's on a shelf behind me somewhere. We get a little bit of information about these gateways, and we get the signal strength, which, as you saw yesterday in JP's excellent presentation, really gives you a lot of information about how healthy the radio is in the area. We can see what speed information and various other frequencies, and a lot of this stuff you don't need to use, but sometimes people ask a question and you go, oh right, okay, can you just give me the JSON from 5 uplinks, and you can just sort of look at some of the details. But for now, what we're really just interested in is extracting out an actual value. Now, you can choose to do this in either Python or PHP. Python's probably easier because you can do it interactively. So when a message comes in, it gets sent off to this save to file function. So if I scroll back up a bit, you can see where this save to file function is. And you can see here that we've got, you'll have to excuse my naming convention. When you've been programming for 40 years, you start just doing it your own way. So I'm a great fan of camel case, and I just call things the or some, depending on what it is. So we get this JSON, which is all of this, and we need to cut it up into chunks, but it's actually in a hierarchy that we can use. So we are targeting particular blocks of information. So we can see that there's a block there called end device IDs, and that's how we retrieve the JSON block here. So all of this here ends up in this variable here. And then, because inside end device IDs, we've got the device ID, we then go down another level. So we use the JSON block that we got from end device IDs to ask for the device ID. And in a similar vein, we've also got somewhere in here the application IDs. There we go. So we've got end device ID, application IDs, application ID, and that's what gives us this hierarchy. So you need to think of it sort of as like almost Towers of Hanoi, or even like on the MQTT Explorer, where it was nested at several levels. Now, some things are at the top level, like this one here, receive that. So we can just target the top level, which is some JSON. But within, and the next one is the uplink message, which is again at the top level, so we can retrieve that. And then that gives us access to be able to get hold of the various pieces of information. Now, there are some wrinkles in this that we need to track for, because if we don't have a payload formatter, Python is going to unceremoniously choke on the information inside. But because we have an uplink message, we can then target decoded payloads. So I'm just going to copy and paste, and I'm going to call that decoded payload, because that's what it is, and that's inside uplink message, so that's all good. So I now have this in a block, so I can reference something like the MCU temperature. equals, and just take the JSON for decoded payload, and again, I'll sort of and because it's called MCU10, I can then paste that in there. And then just for to make life simple, so that you can crack on with such things, I'm just going to print it out. So it'll just appear on the console. Might be useful if I actually put what it is. Print. Keyboard mapping problem there. There we go. Right. So if I now run this, oh, inconsistent use of tabs and something else. Yay. That's a Python formatting problem. Still doesn't like it. And this is at this point where you start swearing at Python, saying, why? Why are you doing this to me? And it's because it's put spaces in there rather than a tab. And Python hates that. And then the person who thought that, for trouble is this text editor doesn't allow me to see any of the any difference between the spaces in the tabs. So I'm just going to switch over to copy and paste this into my Mac, which does let me see the consumed airtime. The problem here, it turns out, is every time I press the tab key, it's putting a bunch of spaces in. And this is why I don't use idle. There we go. So that's now a proper tab. Yeah, as I say, I'm using idle so we end up with a generic. I actually use other IDs in the module. Fingers crossed. Wahey! Right. So, having been annoyed by the stupidity of the system, so we can see coming soon the MCU temp, and it says 20.39. Yes, again, I'm holding the thing up in the air. There's a bit of random noise going on with the analog input. So that just gives you a little insight into how you go about extracting information. You don't actually need it to, if you don't need it to write log files, then you go off and write your own application. The details of which would be, shouldn't print be indented? It should, yes. To see, I'll be hammering it later on. Yeah, there seems to be some random semicolons have been introduced. Maybe because I copied and pasted it over from PHP. Maybe I program in too many languages. Right, okay, so your task, now we've got that working, since it's coming up to, it's definitely practical time, and that should have only taken 5 minutes, so we are currently, 11 minutes behind, dreadful, is to look at your own payload formatter and to replicate this section here. Where you will need within the Python file, which I strongly recommend because you can actually then see what's going on within the on the console, is just slot these 4 lines in. So you need to pick up your decoded payload from out of the uplink message, choose one of your own fields, which will be unique to your own payload formatter, and then put some sort of print message. So if you want to go for that, I am going to run up to the house for a very short bio break. So if you want to get cracking with that, I will be back momentarily, and we can debug any of the issues. Probably a little bit better than I can. Trying to see where the tabs and the semicolons all ended up. Bad habits. So you have homework for 3 minutes. I just swap glasses so I can see where I'm walking, and I'm going to probably grab a coffee at the same time. And I shall be back momentarily for talking about the hackathon and general Q&A, and then I'll be here for a further hour. Right. Swap eyeballs over. How are people getting on? All down to 80 now. Lost a couple more. Cool. Frank is our superstar on this. One of the lovely things about it all being a bit Lego-esque is that it allows you to sort of build it up brick by brick. You can start out with your make a WAN and a hat, and you measure the temperature and the pressure, and then you get that working all the way through to having a nice chart that shows the temperature going up and down. And then over a period of time, you end up like 3 months later with a dashboard with some machine learning going on in the background, predicting where the temperature is going to end up based on, say, outside temperature and indoor temperature, and perhaps wind strength. But you may never have thought of that. I'm sorry, I've just been just got a notification from the BBC News. One of our sort of little niche comedians has passed away, which is very sad. Sean Locke is yeah, someone that I could appreciate his humour. You're having issues fetching from data storage. Somebody's been ferreting around in the files. So what is your issue? Because there will be a message. The golden rule of the forum is give us no detail, we have a crystal ball. No, the golden rule of the forum is that you tell us everything. The problem you're probably having, Puppet, is that you don't have the permissions set for that API key. So you would need to go and edit it for it to be able to view devices, view application information, it doesn't need write. An application view device keys. No, is it a general purpose device key? Add API key. Right, so yes, you need you will need to be able to you will need to turn on view devices application information, and read application traffic. I can actually do that now with my, let's close that away, with my no longer very secret key. Mm-hmm. Line 1, column 8 to 8. Right, so I'm going to get it to show the JSON that it's received. So anyone who's looking at my screen now, I'll just say that we're looking at the data storage. Yeah, Mr. Zurad, your device needs to be joined, and it has to have sent one uplink, because the problem is that Google protocol buffers do not send blank entries. I will circle back on this after we've finished off things. But how are other people getting on with their JSON loads? Return to free to right. Okay. Let me just print. May have changed format because this is a few releases behind. Print the response text. Copy. Paste. Right, so I'll give you a couple more minutes, and then we will move on to bad request details. Bad request details, yes. So I need to turn on my API key, and I need to write new devices, new applications, save changes. Try that again. Run module. Is it the application? Yeah. Dun dun dun. Right. Okay. So I had the tenant ID in there, which was causing problems. That's that. So Pat, it's the tenant ID that's causing issues, but also, as I say, you will need to have the right API permissions set up. Okay. So yeah, Mr. Saraz, if you've got your device joined and it's sent a couple of items, restart your MQTT Python script, and you should find that it then works satisfactorily. Right. So I've added an extra person, which is good. So I am just going to make a couple of comments about the hackathon, which is the people, the lucky individuals in my mentor group will know I think is a wonderful opportunity to showcase an end-to-end, because as an occasional employer of various people, sometimes full-time over the years, at the moment not so much due to COVID, but if someone came to me and they had a device that they could replicate a few of, so it's not sort of something so bizarre and unique. So just these two modules. If I saw that with a couple of an extra sensor on the side, and I saw that it moved all the way through the system and came out the other end and, I don't know, produced a chart in Python or on a web page or the like, that would just tell me that they are employable. So I think if anyone who gets a big thumbs up from Veen and Johan, the founders of the Things network, the biggest community network, LoRaWAN network in the world, if they've got a thumbs up for their hackathon output, an employer or would be mad not to take notice of that ability. So it depends on what your preference is for language. You've got you can use the tiny file manager, is more than capable of, he says if you log back into it, is more than capable of running the PHP that you might need to output it into a small file. There is SQLite installed on those servers, so you could put it into a database, or you could just put it into a flat file, and then you could have another PHP file that processes that and draws a chart using something like Chart.js as an example. On the Python side, it's relatively easy to add a simple GUI. Pygame, as bizarre as it sounds, is actually a really good way to add a simple GUI. Or you could just use TK, Tinker, or you could output it in a format that can then be picked up by something like Excel, or with Python, you could detect when some information goes over, say, a certain temperature, and then send a request to something like IFTTT, if this then that, to send an email. Because as I said, at the moment, for very obvious reasons, the host of these virtual servers blocks mail out the box, and I don't want to go there with turning it on. But you could use other services to pass on an email if it goes over a certain value. And as I say, that's where you suddenly find yourself in a situation where you can build on that. I remember a student asking me, how did Minecraft come about? And I said, one day somebody, I can't remember his name, opened a blank text editor and started writing code. And then a few months later, he had the first version of Minecraft. So it evolves. Right, so here for general Q&A, gone a little bit 10 minutes over, but so it's just a free-for-all now. If you want to push off, go and relax, it's fine. If you want to stay and ask questions, as long as it's vaguely to do with LoRaWAN, then that's fine. If you want to go away and come back, I will be here for the next hour. I'm not going anywhere unless I go and grab like another coffee. So if you do want to go away and come back, that's fine. Let's see, I've got 77 people left. You're welcome, Sam. Yeah, as I say, I can't stress enough. This is the foundation level, and as long as you don't, you can shoot for the stars, but don't try and build that on the first day. This stuff is a good working example. Big round of applause. Thank you. Whilst I've got Lawrence's attention, I prefer to do this live for the US. Oh yes, Notch, that's it. You're welcome, Grant. Is Lawrence going to answer? Who's not a developer, Jamal? Everyone should code. Everyone should code. I've got a video of Kylie Kloss. She was going to be a doctor, but instead she ended up as a supermodel, and she is an advocate for code.org. I do code, but not for a living. Yeah, you may not get paid for it, but the prediction in the future is that at some level, everyone will have to understand code, so they understand their devices and computers. They may not write code, they may not be able to write code, but they need to understand the concept of code. Yeah, so Lawrence, thanks, cool. That's preferable because of the, just the general interactivity. And I can re-record a vanilla version for later on. But yes, fly away, my butterflies. Yeah, don't worry about it, Paul. And Rafael, if you've got questions now, that's fine. Coding is just about thinking in steps. If I'm teaching 8-year-olds, I get a loaf of bread and some marge, some butter, and some jam, and they have to tell me how to make a jam sandwich. And after the first 5 attempts, usually involving me having a jam sandwich close to my face, because I take them literally, they learn about giving commands in a sequence. Yep, as I say, the replay will be online. This is live. It's 11:35 in Bolton. It's not raining at the moment, which means it's going to be raining shortly. It's Wednesday, the 18th of August. Hop in. We'll need time to process this, but go over to the forum. So Dominic, yes, okay. Hopin needs to process this when I've finished, so in an hour's time, and then the TTI team can just edit out the any sort of gaps in performance, and then get it uploaded. But I would anticipate that would be likely to be available by tomorrow morning European time. So I'm here. Ask me anything. I think Jeff, we'll have to do a screen sharing session to help help get you over the hump. Just to put some context on it, I write firmware for IoT. I wouldn't write firmware for motor control lift because I don't particularly do real-time operating systems. IoT sensors are fairly relaxed in comparison. And I obviously have done a lot with desktop and integrations and the like. But when I said earlier that gateways are a black box, my go-to guy for that is Jeff. And Jeff is learning about coding, and he helps me with gateways. And we both live on the forum more than we should. Horses for courses. How do I connect with a knowledgeable developer in a screen sharing session? Well, as I said last night, if you want to send me a private message, if it's not me, I can probably point you at the right person. So if you send me a message, Paul Finman, with some contact mechanism on it, like your email address, we can figure out what your needs precisely need and the right person for that. Right. If you want to process display data, not process logic, which is the best way to proceed? Almost always you end up processing logic, but most of the dashboards actually do have alarms built into them, so that you, if something exceeds the threshold, you get an email or a text alert. If you're new to LoRaWAN, you need to try a bit of everything, so that you understand what all the different Lego bricks do. But the short answer is to Bernard with his question about display data is use a dashboard, and that'll be coming up at the 1 o'clock my time session. It's whatever with Data Cake, and you can do a lot with those sorts of systems. The beer system I did was over 20 years ago. And even then we had to incorporate alarms in a way that just an average dashboard can't cope with, and that's one of my specialties. Is I might pipe data into a dashboard, but I would be looking to set up alarms that are a little bit more sensitive, using sort of my code toolkit. Because there's complex maths and words like hysteresis added in. As Rafael asks, do you need to know Python or JS or both? Ideally, both. Because there's a time and a place for everything. You can bypass knowing PHP by using Python and the web servers built into it, but a lot of display is done on web browsers where you retrieve the data, and then JavaScript does a little bit of processing. But it's like I keep saying, you start out with what looks like, well, what is 10 lines of code, and 6 months later you just got this quite a lot of functionality that's just sort of built up and built up and built up, and sometimes that might mean that you spend a week hacking away at a bit of JavaScript. And a lot of examples on the internet are hugely complicated. I use a framework for PHP that was espoused by Resmondorf, the inventor of PHP, that most people laugh at. But I just say, well, the inventor of PHP says this is how he saw it working, and it still works today. You don't have to go all clever. Bernard, yes. Unfortunately, today, when I was a lad, we had 4-bit processors, and if we had 16-bit bus on our computer, we were grateful. Nowadays, people just throw hardware at it. So Bernard's observation about Grafana being a bit of a resource hog is totally true. I have a virtual machine that I can run Node-RED InfluxDB, which is a database specifically used for time-based data, and Grafana that I'm exploring how it might be used, and may set up a Docker container so that it's easily deployed. But equally, I can draw charts from a webhook, and if that's all that's needed, then I can run it on the smallest of virtual servers. Kevin's asked a question that needs to be answered on the forum. Max payload of 240 bytes. I can't see 240 bytes from here, Kevin. I don't think I've got anything that does much more than about 100. If it does get close to 3 figures, I start looking at ways of carving it up so that it's done in several chunks. And in theory, and there's a whole pile of maths behind how many a gateway can support. So even if you said 56, so let me just share my whole screen, so we can look at a. This is sort of somewhat horribly off topic, but who cares? It's the question at hand. So it says, what's going to be safe for me to open? Bookmarks. Right, so here is the go-to airtime calculator that I use. I will put that rather on the forum, Jeff says. Oh, I've just managed to sleep my screen. Right, yes. Yeah, no, yeah, it's... Yeah. Right. Jeff's in charge. He's bigger than me. He's got a better beard. He knows more about gateways, and I need to cooperate with that. Yeah, Kevin, I mean, the short answer could be 1,000, it could be 10,000. But we try not to push the envelope. So I've still got 65 people here on here, he says. I've got 2 screens with this open. Yeah. 64 people, none of whom have a question about the form. Any thread we should bump in? Right, we've sort of generated a thread, a section that I need to get, that one of my other moderators is in the process of changing. So let me just scroll down. Okay, we go into there. We go into here. New topic. LoRaWAN gateway ST. This is the thread for Paul, first, please just explain your payload format times so we can get it on a diet. There you go, Bernard. I have created a new topic, which is actually a good thing, because when you first register, you have to read a bit before you can start a topic, and you have to read a bit before you can actually post a reply, because it just slows down the quite a large number of spammers who end up on the system. Yeah, Kevin, Jeff is by far and away, yeah. Yeah, Jeff's the man really to answer, and the chat system's not great, and unless Jeff wants to share his screen. But also, we also try to make answers relatively generic, because we are all volunteers. Running this course helps me develop training materials for my clients, and on the forum, me and Jeff and Lionel and the other moderators are there as in a voluntary capacity to help to bring the community on. So when we're answering questions, we try and keep it relatively generic, so that it's not hugely use case specific. That and the fact that we have to maintain a certain boundary between professional issues to do with liabilities and advice. So yeah. So yeah, I'd take it to the forum, please, and we will get it sorted. But does anybody have any other questions? There's still been 60 people here. Thinking of the hackathon, mostly what I was saying, Jordi, was that not to sort of don't underestimate the power of the hackathon in terms of career development, promoting your own brand, putting it up on a blog somewhere. A fair number of staff members at TTI have been recruited because they consistently blogged about doing various different things. I'm not a staff member because I'm too old and crumbly and independent. But there are, as I say, there are people who've done that. So creating something that goes from having your maker WAN that's reading some of the sensor data, and then having that pass through the whole system, and then out the other end and displaying a chart or sending an email. And you can use the server space to do that. The SQLite is installed on there, so you could write a PHP webhook that keeps data in a database, and then another web page that reads that data from that database, or it could just be a text file and draws a chart, or if it passes information on to the if this then that IFTTT, which can then relay an email on. When we come to Friday morning and there's some presentations, getting a thumbs up from Veen and Johan, the founders of the Things Network, any sensible, aware employer would consider that to be a big plus. So as much as people may try to find some really unique application, and you will have to try hard because there's some really unique applications for LoRaWAN, I just concentrate on doing the basics first of all. And you can put it in context. As I say, you've got a temperature sensor on here. You could say if an uplink arrives at 11 o'clock in the morning and the temperature is below 18 degrees centigrade, you could put it in the context of saying, well, this is my granny monitor, for my grandparents, and I want to know what the temperature is in the house, and if by lunchtime it's not warm enough, I want to be sent an email so that I can then phone up and find out what they're doing with the heating. So even the most mundane of configurations can make all the difference. Does that sort of cover where you're give you some idea, Geordie? Yeah, no covered by 7 o'clock from my experience. Still trying to figure out how to make a low-cost toilet flush detector that isn't hard to install. I can make medium-sized priced ones that are hard to install, but I haven't figured out a low-cost, easy to install one yet. You're welcome, Geordie. It's fun. I enjoy it. I'm going to do it again later, once I've got my voice back. It's the self-install problem bit, Jeff. You've got to get the children of the older people to install it. Absolutely, Bernard. I'm sure with the Zoom account and a bit of coordination. I mean, certainly I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about RF and telecoms from Nedra, who's a technical documentation person. She has expertise in that I lack and that Jeff can't explain. I'm able to connect with the API authorization now, but I'm receiving empty JSON data. Have you turned on your storage integration? He says. So in integrations, there is a button that says activate it, because I've activated it. It now says deactivate. Yeah, certainly, Chris. Yeah, my LoRaWAN learning journey is 2.5 years. Started 2.5 years ago. So in some respects, you get to a point where you forget what you know, and because you're just doing it naturally. So I've found it useful as a refresh, and I've picked up some interesting tips and techniques by keeping a second eye on the on some of the other presentations, but also finding out where people are at when they come to start learning. So hopefully, Pup, you've turned on your storage integration now, and it's cooperating for you. So when we get down to 50 people, I'm going to hand out the lottery ticket numbers for next week. So it'll be, whereabouts is the forum? Okay. You can't stress that Google is your friend. There we go. Thank you, Bernard. Yeah, the Things forum is about yeah, is asked nicely for when you're stuck, and you probably get over the space of a month hundreds of insert currency here, dollars, pounds, euros, with consultancy for free. A few people ask for us to write the code for them. It doesn't work so well. Some people like to hide the details. Joe's popping to me now. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, the boss is just going out to see her mum. So just tell me. Yeah. Yeah, like any community, or say you walked into a pub that specialised in brewing its own beer, slide in, find out who's who, what's what, who knows what's going on. Look at the tasting notes. That's all good, and just sort of join in with sort of observations and the like. And anyone can answer a question, even if it's not strictly correct. Most of the answers are more about helping people move towards their goal. It's quite rare, or under exceptional circumstances, that we gift wrap something and hand it to them on a plate. Descartes, yes, I am Descartes. As you may have noticed, all of the web addresses, because 27 years ago, someone said, "Are you going to invoice me?" Because I'd only just started freelancing, and I was reading one of the original texts from Descartes, and the concept of thinking. Thank you, Pat. Just a little secret for Pat, but as I say, I'm very keen on using LoRaWAN for things other than some of the stuff that goes on in Europe. So perhaps at some point I can come and visit, and we could create something awesome. Let's see if I can get MQTT Explorer onto here. I'm waiting for another question. Ooh. Yeah, do I want to try Snap? Oh, no, that's not such a good idea. There we go. Close that. Something to think. There's not really, no. Did you turn on your did you turn on your Jeff? Did you turn? The usual gotcha is that you didn't turn this one on. This bit, you know, obviously for your own particular ID, is just copy and paste from Tiny File Manager. This bit's important, JSON, but this is it. Am I not sharing? Oh, sorry. Didn't realise that my screen share had dropped off. There we go. Right, so we'll try that again. So in webhooks, it's got to be on JSON. That's going to be whatever it is for you in your file manager, and then you need to have enable turned on. Where do you start your programming education? What book or website? Which language? That's like a religious war of biblical proportions. It's not which book, website, or language. It's how do I learn the violin? Thankfully for you guys, I don't have Helen's violin with me. Otherwise, you'd find out how bad I am at playing the violin. But if I've practiced for 10 minutes every day, I would become much better. So the old fogey answer is it doesn't, within reasonable realms, it doesn't really matter. I would probably look at checking out code.org or one of the Python tutorial sites. What matters is that you write a little bit of code every day. You're a lot older than me. Not in computer years, maybe. Yeah, solve world hunger and boil a few oceans. Where do I see Laura Wantec? Right, so Paul, I will answer. I will re-review where things are at. But the thing that people don't do, the thing that makes the difference, is writing a little bit of code every day. If I gave you a violin or a ukulele or a piano or anything, and you did 10 minutes practice every day, however bad you might start out, you will be better after a month. And that's the thing that people miss. I go in schools to help teach secondary school computer science, and a lot of the students struggle because they do not write a little bit of code every day. The ones that do, their computer science theory about binary and binary addition and some of the real low-level stuff might be appalling, but they get it because they can code. So it's coding, yeah. Code Academy, yeah. I mean, there's so many. Age always looks better if you convert to hex. Yes, absolutely. Kevin, where do I see the LoRaWAN protocol or tech evolving over the next 5 years? Johan sits on one of the technical committees for the LoRaWAN Alliance, which comes with a small price tag, but they're a big player. At the moment, majority of devices usually seem to be on 1.0.2, and we're seeing a lot of stuff moving to 1.0.3. There is not a breaking change, but there are changes between 3 and 4 that are going to hold back legacy devices to some extent. And they are accommodated on the thin stack. But the fact that we've still got stuff on 2 and things are starting, more things are on 3, and ideally we want to be on 4, and they're rewriting 1.0 to 1.1, is that it's not going to change a whole heap over the next 5 years. We're just going to get better at managing fleets of devices and gateways and processing the data, and finding the right use cases for different parts of IoT, and potentially making the barrier to entry a little less complicated. That's certainly coming along with devices with the claiming system. But I think mostly overall it's just going to be more, but either easier to use or manage. But I'd be interested. A Radio Shack 100 handheld. Oh, I miss those days. I really want one of those. Find a Sinclair little notebook. I think Jeff probably got a better picture than me, because he's been doing LoRaWAN longer than me, as to where it's going to evolve. I think for me, it's all about finding use cases that don't involve Europeans drinking alcohol or accessing social media or any of the other ephemeral things that are going on in the world. There's so much going on in the world that technology could help with. Doing the corporate stuff pays bills, means that I can do other things like this. So I'm happy to grit my teeth and do that. Yeah, the fact that Israel's only just officially allowed LoRaWAN on their radio spectrum is a bit odd, because any area that has desertification and therefore has scarce water resources is gift wrapped for a LoRaWAN implementation. But I'd give it 6 months. Get LoRaWAN under your belt before you learn about third-party join servers. It's a feature that's been made available in the V3 stack, but I'm not aware particularly of anyone using it yet. I've had a couple of people turn on the do not decrypt button, and then have tried to figure out how to decrypt LoRaWAN packets themselves. yeah. So yeah, and also you'd need to learn the entire of the LoRaWAN spec. Just trying to think. Going to the library. Right, so these are the different LoRaWAN spec documents, which is a really great document because it's actually got line numbers. So when they make changes, so this is 90 pages of how LoRaWAN works. And if you ever find yourself unable to sleep, I can absolutely guarantee that this detail will get you sorted. But having I think you will probably need to read this at least once before you would be able to appreciate where the join server bit comes in. Oh, Sarah, right. From my perspective, LoRaWAN in desertification areas that don't have lots of water. So I live in northern part of England. We've got reservoirs dotted around all over the place. So we use LoRaWAN for other things. But if you live in an area where water is a scarce resource, and you may have recalled me making sort of various references to sort of different projects, and you need to keep an eye on that resource, whether it's you've got the Australian outback and you need to ensure that a water resource that is 5 miles away is okay, rather than driving there every day to have a look at it. Why not have a LoRaWAN node? If the terrain's flat, or you can afford to put up a 20-meter pole, and it can be bamboo, you will get phenomenal range. And it doesn't need to check in very often, so it could just check in 4 times a day. So if one of the messages gets missed, you've still got a rough idea of how much of what the water level's like. But that saves you that 5-mile drive just to go and have a check on the water. So there are some applications, and as we were saying, Israel's only just officially opened up its LoRaWAN frequency channels. Some places where you sort of think this is a no-brainer. Having a module monitoring something out in the depths of a inhospitable terrain is just a no-brainer. Yeah, in South Africa, I'm aware that you get metered for taking water out of the rivers. And so the last thing the farmer wants to do is end up taking too much water out. But obviously they don't want their crops to be they don't want their crops to suffer. So finding that right balance. Bernard, if your background is in data center operations and DevOps, then I don't really want to think. Then you could set up you can set up your own stack if you want. It's open source. I've done it on one machine. I think it took a whole day for me to wrap my head around it because DevOps isn't and SysOps isn't my thing. But you might be in Hog's Heaven, or you might just want to run away from it. Right, okay. So a little message to Sarah. I'm not entirely geographically challenged. It's just I interpreted SA as being South Africa. But South Africa's got lots of desert, and so does South Australia. Yeah, so same difference really, except for Australia's bigger, I think. Well, let's not start a war over that. Saudi Arabia, is that? Yeah, I might start a controversy about Saudi Arabia. Oh, right, that is SA. So what's South Africa then? ISO codes for ZA. Oh, of course. I know some people in Canberra who've just had to go into a lockdown because of one case. If I went outside and threw a stone, I could probably hit one case just on my street alone. So you definitely, your federal governments are definitely doing a lockdown with teeth on. This is really bizarre. Right, so we're down to 44. We've got 10 minutes to go. I'm fine. Yeah. Well, you know, keep telling me, I know I throw stones at them, Jeff. I've got at least one disgruntled neighbour on the street. Yeah. Educated, doesn't want to get a jab. Right, so let's see if I can get this MQTT Explorer running. Message final directory. Is executable. Make it executable and double click it. Execute. Wait with bated breath. Let's work. Well, Jeff, if you add me as a collaborator to your application and you message me your login user, I can have a look. It seems to be doing anything at all. So Chris, let's get so virtually everything within there's a variety of different partitions within within the stack. There is the tenant, which is sort of puts everyone in one pool, and then each person who registers is a person in their own right, but they can set up organizations. And then by virtue of that, you can then within a particular application set up collaborators so that somebody else can have access depending on the API level, the permissions level that you give them. So it's entirely feasible to have a user who is given access to an application so that they can view the devices and see what the data is, but they can't actually make any changes, all the way through to them actually having as much dominion over an application as you do, by virtue of the fact that they're added at an organizational level. So there's a whole variety of use cases for this. So for instance, if I've got a client who wants to run their own stuff, they can add me as a collaborator at various levels. Or alternatively, if I'm running the stuff, I can add them as a collaborator with various levels of permission. Or if you're a larger organization, then you might have 20 or 30 members of staff that need to have some degree of control about the system. Then there's the sort of the concept of organizations and the like to allow you to group people into a pool. Again, it's something that you when you come to a point that you need to, that you think, oh, it'd be useful if Fred could do this. So, for instance, at the moment, Jeff's struggling with his webhook. If he adds me as a collaborator just to the application, so if I go into applications now, presumably this is Jeff's. And I'm not going to drill into that because he might have put lots of exciting personal information in there, but all of a sudden it now appears in my application list. So I can now dive in, but on a different screen, and have a look at, use me as a village idiot example if you wish. Don't encourage me. Yeah, so I can sort of dip in and have a little look at how things are set up. So I mean, it's a support infrastructure development. It's got all sorts of possibilities. Actually, I don't need the creds. Well, I don't know if I don't need the creds. Let me just have a look on the other one. Save you having to type your. Right, okay, well, we're sort of coming to the end now, so I'll have a look. Yeah, so, I mean, again, that's what the forum's all about. You don't know what you don't know, but if you come up against a use case or a situation and you think, oh, it'd be really great if I could, but I wonder if I can, or how would I do this? Then you just post on the forum and somebody who's either done it or has enough knowledge of the environment will point you in the right direction. But there's also, it's relatively succinct, but the documentation is pretty awesome. So 1 minute remaining. It's been a blast. I've enjoyed it. I enjoy it. It's good. Hopefully people go away and build some awesome things. And yeah. And mostly the awesome things, hopefully, will be things that are not Facebook, if you get my drift. You're welcome. Schön. It's schön, Manfred. Right, I'm going to sign off. I'm going to rest my throat. And I'm going to get ready for doing it all over again with the Americans. Yes, and Albert, yeah, come on the forum. Tell us what you're up to. Tell us what you'd like to do. Yeah, as I say, I've sort of got enough corporate income. It's just doing this. Yes, Jeff, I'm going to do it live for them too, because I don't. It's just you know, it's not my style. I can format this differently if it's been delivered as a pre-record. But I really needed feedback to know where people were at, which I've got, which is good. Anyway, enough for now. Sure. See you in the chat and on the forum. Bye.